Oops anymore. Okay.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim. Welcome aboard.
Hi. I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole meeting. I can stay for a while. There are way too many evening meetings each week.
Okay. Totally. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, Rob, can I do now? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I show it at like 5:04 p.m. And we have everyone we're expecting. Bill Sandberg is having some technical trouble. He'll be signing in shortly. So we're going to start out by having the planning department review for us the meeting protocols, including COVID and Zoom. And I'm going to turn this over to Kohala to start that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruth. So this is just our normal, what we read at the beginning of our AC meetings. And so because of the COVID-19 emergency and state and federal guidance on large meetings or gatherings, and pursuant to the mayor's proclamation regarding COVID-19, Community Development Plan Action Committee meetings will be held online until further notice. Members of the public have the option to watch the CDP Action Committee meetings live on the Planning Department's Zoom channel, or for the first time, join the meeting by Zoom link. And so we are excited to have 2 community members join us in this Zoom link today. And we're hoping that this will grow as we continue. And so because this is our first time including community in this kind of virtual setting, we ask for your patience as we try to navigate through this. And we are open to any suggestions that make this a little bit easier for everyone to participate. And so just some of the Aloha Etiquette that we like to use during these virtual convenings is to have one person speak at a time. And if you would like to speak, either raise your hand like that, or you can use the virtual raise hand icon that you can find in Zoom. And then, so we're also going to leave the chat function up. And so, you know, anyone is welcome to add comments, thoughts, questions into the chat. And so Rob and I will try to monitor that, as well as Tristy, and then anything that needs to be brought into the conversation, we'll kind of interrupt as politely as possible and bring that into the conversation. We know that sometimes the chat can be distracting. And so if it is distracting, please don't feel obligated to pay attention to it, and we'll be kind of monitoring that. And then relevant conversations will be included in minutes and things like that later. And then, of course, always silence cell phones and minimize other devices and distractions. So before I turn it back over to Ruth, does anyone want me to walk through kind of the raise hand or chat features that Zoom offers? Okay, if we're all good, then hand it back over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I just want everyone to know that Alexis is not with us today. She's not feeling well, so that we have the pleasure of having Rob Leisure again with us again to fill in for anything she might have helped us with. And so we're going to go to roll call attendance. And just to let you know, both Karen Anderson and Mark Jordan have let us know that they're not going to be here. And if it's okay, I'm not going to do a roll call vote. We've got Julia and Pete and Tristy and Kevin and Bill and myself in terms of members, and we're honored with the presence of Councilman Richards and then our planning staff. And we do have John Mitchell and Sherry Bresto with us from the community, and we're very happy to have you guys on board too. Okay, so we haven't received any additional requests for additions to the agenda. So I'm going to go on to the announcements unless somebody wants to slip something in now. Regarding public comment on agendas, we did accept written testimony via email or in person in Hilo or Kona up to 2 days prior to the time of the meeting. And then we also have today received an email from Jojo, a former member of our action committee. And that came in later. Kiko sent it out to each of us. I haven't seen it in the send out. So what I'm going to ask, and you may very well not been sitting by your email for the next email to come in. So I'm going to ask Keiko to read JoJo's email to us.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Jojo, for sending in your testimony. And so I'll just read from her email directly. So she is wondering, for 4 points, Kauai Homestead would like to be included in the Heritage Corridor and added into the guidelines for protecting Hawaiian history and culture. Also include Kauai in the development of coastal resource management plans and add Kauai in developing and promoting community events. And so for each of those points, she was wondering who the best contact person would be to work with. And then a question around what happens now with the issues that she's presented, and who would do the follow-up with her. And so we've already arranged for Alexis and I to meet with Jojo sometime early next week, so that we can dig in a little bit more into the initiatives that she's working on within the Kauai community. And so I would just add that if any of you have specific questions or comments or thoughts that you want to kind of explore with Jojo, please share those with Alexis and I, and we'll be sure to include that in when we meet with her next week.
Okay, so can you just give the highlights again? Heritage,
Sure.
Go ahead.
Heritage Corridor, included in the guidelines for protecting Hawaiian history and culture, development of coastal resource management plan, and developing and promoting community events.
Okay, thank you for already having set up to contact her. Okay. And we've already asked our people who are here if they want to give testimony, and they're not, they're just with us to have the fun we have in Action Committee. We're moving ahead. We'll be considering draft minutes for the March 11th meeting of this year and our June 29th meeting. And just a reminder, first I need a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting, and then we'll discuss it. So do I have a motion to approve it with a second on the March 12th amendments? I mean, the March 12th minutes.
I'd like to comment on the March 12th minutes. There was nothing in the chat when we were doing the voting, apparently Kamuela had never brought up the any comments until Tristy was nominated. And he said people can go, and if they're interested in nominating themselves for the position, they could, but he never said that when Ruth went up to get voted on. So I just thought that was a bit of a change in the, he should have mentioned that at the onset of the vote, that's all. But it didn't get mentioned in the minutes again, even though I wanted it in from the chat that I wrote in there.
Okay,
so
so hang on just a second. We need to have a motion to approve in a second, and then we discuss.
Okay.
So I need a motion to approve, and someone to second it, please. Pete's making a motion to approve the minutes, and I'll second it. Okay. There we go. Now we're open for discussion. And I just want to remind you that we did consider these minutes at our meeting in June, but the question was raised by our member Alice about the absence of the chat's conversation being reflected in that. And after some back and forth, because we've really never discussed chat before, Bill moved that we table the approval of amendments until this could be looked at. So the current draft that we're looking at includes, I guess from what Julia just said, some chat stuff, but I guess maybe not everything. And the question remains for the Action Committee as to whether these are part of the minutes of the March 11th meeting. So now it's open for discussion. So Julia, you're saying that what you want to say, what you said again, and that there was something that you wasn't included in the minutes that you want included?
No, what I'm saying is when the voting began for the chair and the vice chair, the people started to vote, and they voted for you. And then when they were looking for the vice chair, Kamuela added, oh, if anybody wants to nominate themselves for the position, they're welcome to do so. And I immediately wrote in the chat and said that I thought that they should have brought that rule up at the onset of the vote. That's all.
Okay, so Kevin, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna. Because we have not, to my knowledge, we've never had a discussion about the role of chat as a part of the formal meeting. Yes, as far as I know, we've not ever had that discussion. But I know that Kevin, as president of the Village Association, that they dealt with. Somebody has like a bass on or something. Anyway, Kevin, would you like to talk about just chat in the Waikoloa Village Associations and then where you guys came down on that? He's playing Hard Rock movie in the background. I mean, okay. That's your bass.
There's some sort of issue with,
Yeah, Kevin, if you're talking, no one can hear you. It sounds like someone's playing a bass guitar.
it sounds almost like feedback, maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. It's just a software problem, no worries. That's my whole career is software problems. Okay, so we started using Zoom meetings and we left the chat on and the chat became difficult to manage and we had members making comments in the chat that were not being responded to by board members and in fact became an issue where the members who are chatting were spreading misinformation, making false statements, giving information that was incorrect. And then because the board members weren't able to keep watching the chat, there were like 17 people typing all like crazy. Some people left the meeting thinking that some things that were in the chat were formal communication and the real thing, even though it was all wrong. And so what we had to do is we decided to treat the chat just like we would treat members attending a physical meeting, which is the members attending a physical meeting aren't allowed to sit there and kibitz amongst themselves and talk to each other and send secret messages and answer questions that were asked by other members without first being recognized and having an opportunity to speak. And so what we did is we closed the chat and then anybody who was attending virtually was to raise their hand just like they would in a physical meeting. I have something to say, right? And then they would be recognized and then they would speak or type. And then that input only would become part of the meeting record. But any other chat or anything was removed because that was unmonitored and you couldn't guarantee that you were on top of it. So we turned off the chat and had only recognized input, recognized comments only. And after that, everything became normal, right? It was fine. Like people understood they needed to be recognized before they could give a comment. So, if we're talking about meeting procedures, I strongly recommend doing something like that. We don't have too many contentious attendees at our action committee meetings, but you never know when something could come up and you would have a problem, and it's always hard to fix it afterwards. And so from our experience, the best thing to do was to treat virtual attendees just like physical attendees. They don't talk amongst themselves. When they want to make a comment, they ask to be recognized, and then they can make their comment, and their comment becomes part of the meeting record. So I think, Ruth, that might be what you were looking for my input.
Yeah, I wanted you to share that because I knew you told me that story, and I thought, well, okay. Anybody else have comments on just chat and how much it's formally a part of the meeting? Pete, you're okay. Well, I will tell you that I have a concern with it, with things not being that I'm not a person who watch chats during meeting because I don't know, I guess I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but I am focused on what's going on in the meeting and I find chat distracting. So all those comments weren't for me, not, or any of the, I don't know what else was in the chat. I just know what got left. And then according to Julia, not everything that she'd even had in there was there, but it's just interesting to be in a meeting and then get a record of the meeting and it wasn't part of the meeting you were in, for me. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes? Oh, wait, Julia, are you wanting to say something? Are you writing yes?
Yes, I want to comment on what Kevin had said. So is there going to be an official rule on this? Because I wasn't a virtual attendee, I'm a virtual member on the committee, which is different. So I just want to know the rules going forward on chat. Are we going to create a rule for this and take a vote on it or what? I'm just asking.
I don't think the agenda is created in the way that we can take a vote on that today.
Okay.
If I can make a suggestion, I hear what everybody's saying. And so maybe a workaround is that action committee members don't comment in the chat, but folks who are in attendance in the meeting are able to, and then it'll be our Kuleana, the vice chair, and planning staff to kind of monitor that chat and bring into the conversation things other than good job, I agree, you know, those kinds of things. I think because it's a community meeting, being able to kind of harness community voice within that meeting is important. And I think in an in-person setting, you would be likely to call on folks who are raising their hands, who weren't a part of the committee, right? And so trying to think about the easiest way that we can kind of replicate that in this virtual world. So yeah, I think with our 2 members in attendance today, it's easy to monitor chat and everybody, you know, I don't anticipate there being trouble. If, for instance, there was 50 folks from community participating and everybody's chatting, it is going to be problematic. So it is something to consider.
So it sounds like
Julia's question, I think, is whether we're going to, from both for on these minutes and from henceforth, are we going to include chat? Tim, do you guys deal with this at all at council?
No, absolutely not. Everything, there is no tracking or chat or anything like that. That's not official. Only what you're discussing is official and everything else is not part of it.
Okay. Pete?
So maybe, oh, sorry, go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
I think that Kevin's made a very good point, or has made points, and we should make this clear to the public that chat is not an official part of business as far as agendized subjects and voting and things of that sort. But I agree with Keiko that it's a good way for the public to be able to chime in. It would make for endless meetings if we went with everybody chatting. So I think maybe if we come out with just an explanation, maybe it can come from the planning side. And otherwise, we would have to agendize this vote for a future meeting, I think.
Okay. And so given that discussion, I would like to make an amendment, or I would like to help me with my wording on this. I'm supposed to be better at this. I would like to amend the motion to approve the minutes as of what we received in the most recent publication from planning. And I would like to return to the minutes that we had from the end of June. And I would like to move that those minutes be approved as the minutes of that meeting, which would not include chat notes. And I don't mean that to offend at all. It's simply that this is raised an issue that we've not dealt with before. And it's just, I I don't know how we collect a group memory when it isn't the group memory, and that's what the minutes should be. So is there a second? Okay, hearing none, then we're back to the main motion, which is to approve the minutes as sent out by planning most recently, which includes comments from the chat that are in yellow.
Can you hear me?
Kevin wants to
And
second.
I'll second the motion so we
Huh?
can have the discussion. I will second
you'll
your.
second them. Oh, Kevin, you're seconding my motion? Okay.
So we can have
Okay,
the
and that's
discussion.
just to go back to the regular minutes that we had before us at the June meeting. They did not have chat comments in them. And we tabled that because chat wasn't reflected. And then Bill said, let's table this because we need to look into this and have a talk about it. And so now that's what we've done. And the motion that's been made and seconded now takes us back. And it's the same minutes. It's just they don't have the chat stuff included. So that's the motion now on the table. Is there any further discussion on that?
So I found it interesting to hear that at council, they don't consider any chat or other comments. And it seems like that would be a good policy for us to just adopt at the same rather than doing something yet again different. So I would support going back to the original minutes and just saying the chat is not part of the official meeting record.
Okay, I'd like to call the vote. Let's see where the heck I am. Okay, so and we'll do a voice vote on this. Julia Alos,
Sorry, just to clarify, Chair, are we voting on the first motion?
no,
Because there's-
the first motion has now been amended. So the motion on the table
Okay,
is to
we're just
approve the
amending.
minutes that were submitted to the June 29th meeting that did not have any chat comments in them. That's not approval. The initial motion was to approve the ones that have been sent out and in yellow have chat information included.
We have to.
There's
vote
been an
on-
amendment to that motion to approve the minutes as they were originally presented without chat in them. That's been seconded, and that's what I'm getting ready to call the vote on. Okay?
Do we have to vote on amending the motion or can we just vote on the amended motion?
No, we're voting on, this amendment to the motion is treated just like a motion. A motion's made, a motion's seconded, and then you vote on it. Okay? So an amendment to the motion is treated the same way. Once it's at the discussion. So that's actually what we're voting now is to accept the original minutes that were presented at the end of June. Is everybody clear about that? Okay, so Julia Alice. I'll move on and come back to you. Let's see, Pete.
Aye.
Okay, Tristy,
Yes,
Kevin,
Yes.
Bill.
Yes,
Okay, and I vote yes. And Julia, I'm going to come back around to you. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so are you voting yes or no on this this motion?
I'll vote, I guess, for it, but yeah, the March minutes, correct?
That's correct. Okay, so we're going to move on now. Thank you very much. So that is 6 members in favor, and that's everyone present. Okay, we're moving on now to look at the June 29th minutes. Again, I need a motion to consider that and a second, and then we'll discuss them.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Steve? Yep, okay, all right. And then discussion on the June 29th minutes. Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna call the votes. Julia,
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Tristy,
Yes,
Kevin,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes,
Okay, and Ruth. All right, now we're going to move into business. And the first order of business that we have today is communication 21-3. And what this is the communication regarding the August 12th meeting of this year that was a joint action committee meeting. And there's a requirement that this come before our committee to be reported back to the full action committee. So our members who attended were Karen and Tristy and myself and Mark Jordan. And so that means only Tristy and I are here. And actually, Tristy was going to take lead, but she's probably going to she's going to start us off here and lead us through this and do an overview of the meeting. And then as part of that conversation, I guess, Rob, are you going to share the survey that was done at the end of the meeting by participants?
Keiko.
Keiko, you're going to do that? Okay. All right. Okay. So Tristy, please.
Okay, so just briefly, we went over we had the speakers that spoke about the ERAP, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that got extended to June 2022, I believe. And the funding that is there, that ongoing in the community. And it's not just for, they have to meet the average monthly income requirement of 80%. The Public Access, the Preservation Space and Natural Resources Preservation Commission that Paul, in regards to the preservation of Pololu Valley, and you had 2 testimonies that came about, three, excuse me. You had one high school kid from the area and then 2 other entities in support of the preservation and process. And then we had the County of Hawaii Climate Action Plan individual that spoke from the county office, and she gave the brief framework on the process of what the county is doing regarding the what is that, surveys or the timeline of projection on the change of the climate change and the impacts. There was the speaker from the Puna CDP Action Committee that gave feedback on Susie Osborne, about the project that they're doing there with the donated 10-acre property, and how they're kind of giving back to the community in Nana Valley regarding food security, food education, and agricultural focus hub to kind of give back and plant native or local products where different entities are creating plans in the process, and they've hired or seeked and reached out numerous Hawaiian entities to kind of help them plan and draft 3 stages of their plans in the future. And then the emergency access route connectivity discussion in the Hamakua area that was brought up by Brad. So other than that, I generally sums up what was discussed and that.
Good job. Thank you, Tristy. And we did kind of launch a little bit off of the, because Brad brought that up because of the Pawilo fire and what they had just been through. And in conjunction with that, and since then, Waikoloa had had a fire, and also Congress had been moving forward with an infrastructure initiative. And I just really pitched to everybody that we be sure that we get our fair share of that infrastructure money, which I do think at least that will come through. So if it does, it'll be the first time we've seen that kind of money in a long time. And if there's anything that comes up in this or later discussions that we think, if we want to consider anything that came up that will help us promote our CDP, that would have to do with establishing investigatory subcommittees on specific topics, we can talk about doing that. Okay. So I'm going to just have us do a vote by show of hands to approve this communication 21-3. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. And then we're going to move on to, oh, I'm sorry. Rob, would you please share with us? I apologize. No, Keiko. What happened was Alexis put out a post-meeting survey, and I just wanted you guys to, we wanted to share the results of that survey for the people that participated. And it was about 28 or 30 people. That were not planning staff, I think, Keiko. Anyway, go ahead.
So
There
real
we
quick,
go.
I'll just share my screen. And we'll just go through this real quick and we'll send this out to you folks later. And so I think what we're trying to do is get into the habit of having some follow-up questionnaires go out to you folks and the members of the public who are participating so that we can just continue to improve our kind of outreach and how we're working together. If I can figure out how to make this go, there we go. And so we had members, although we didn't have any members from North Kohala, our action committee member did watch the post after and had some positive comments about it. And we're also sending it out to other very active community members in North Kohala who are hoping to engage in the near future. And so one of the questions was whether or not folks felt that the joint AC meeting achieved any of these objectives: information sharing, education awareness, and collaborative problem solving, networking with other AC members. And so this is just the feedback, and we'll send this out to you folks. Just a question on whether the topics that were shared, the information that was shared, whether it was relevant and engaging. And then kind of open-ended questions to get actual thoughts and feedback from folks on how we can improve our virtual convenings. And then what kind of topic-based training or workshops are you interested in as AC members, and what do you think your community is interested in? Because what we're hoping to do through these joint action committee meetings is be able to engage and share back and forth between county and community. So not only the county sharing out information, but our hope is that community would want to share out projects that they're working on. And then just an open-ended question of what else folks wanted to share about the joint AC meeting. And so we'll send this out to you folks. It's also posted on we'll post it on the website so that it's available for everyone to view.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
We're going to move on to business item 2. And we're going to have, this is our chance to share out about things that are going on. I was wondering, like I said, Karen is not with us, but I do know that she's very actively working on the things in Puako. We know what a important issue the waste treatment is there. Bill or Pete, do you want to talk about your progress on your historic preservation, or no updates? Or Bill, you're smiling. Are you going to talk?
Just when you get started doing something like we were going to have a community group to get together, then COVID comes back in again, and pretty much everybody's scattered doing other things. So we have not been able to launch that. We've set a couple of dates. We got ready to do that. We let people know. Pete, remind me though, did we ever report on the meeting we had with the Parks Director?
With the who?
The Parks Director. I'm asking Pete whether we ever let you guys know about that. Hello, Pete.
I don't think we did.
No, I don't either.
Oh, okay. Why don't you take the lead on that and let me fill in, because I've been screwing around with my internet thing. I've been off since Thursday, so I'm still trying to figure out how to get things working. I'll fill in. I'm listening to you.
Well, I don't have my notes here, but a couple of items. We've started the long process, maybe not in my lifetime, but looking at the government road that goes behind Imiola Church and up along the homesteads and back down at Kohala at the Mana Road. And that's sort of an ancient right of way, and it would be an adjunct to the trails and greenway system. So we've done some preliminary work on that. I think we talked about that before. And then we also, when we met with Mo Messina, we also discussed the general town planning and trying to provide the connector road to help the traffic situation in town, and then also to keep the open space, that being Manukioli Park, the 10 acres behind Parker Ranch Shopping Center as the town develops toward Mauna Kea. Boy, I've run out of remembrances, Bill. You got anything else?
Okay, yeah, I can pick up on that. We did have a discussion about trying to get some collaboration to assist the Parks Department by having friends of the park, friends of the historic corner, so that we could actually cut the grass without having to have a corporation cutting it at twice the cost, because it had to be, according to the county, had to have licensed, bonded, insured, and GL and everything else. So we're working on that with the Parks Department because of the cottage, the historic cottage there. And what came up in the conversation was also the skateboard park seems to be not having anybody in charge of it at this particular time. A lot of graffiti, no open and closing. And so I reached out to the nonprofit that was there before, which was, come on, help me.
We ran into Ed Horwath, Margaret's.
Yeah, Ed and his wife, right?
Yeah, Margaret.
They were the key people with the skateboard.
Right.
And what I was going to try to do is get an update from her as to what she had left it as. And I figured that we could probably try to figure out how to get that back to assist the Parks Department again, so that there's, you know, some nonprofit in charge, some friends of the park type of thing. So we had that discussion too. We've been having just open discussions with Director Mo, just to let him know what's going on in town, and not asking him for anything, just trying to keep things going. And then he shares some information with us so that we can kind of sniff around and see whether that's something we should be doing. So we've enjoyed it. There's no real agenda. It's basically just a discussion meeting, and go from there. When we get to where we really need to get some action plan, then our councilman will be notified so that he can come to one of these meetings so that we can actually figure out whether we could make it work or not. I think the other thing that was discussed that we should just bring up is the status of the post office. We really think that the post office, if they ever decide what they're going to do and where they're going to go, that existing structure should be an adjunct for the senior center, because it shares parking, it shares building. It would be a way of getting an increase in senior capacity without having to go to build something. So I'm leaving it at that.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Sam, it looks like you're being bossed by your son to get off. Is that correct? I know that. Okay, thank you so much.
Not quite yet. I did have a comment though.
Okay, go.
Hello, Tim.
Hello, everyone. Bill, you were talking about the skate park in Waimea or Waikoloa?
That skate park in Waimea.
Yeah, boy, the time's getting away from me, but we had a student from Waimea, not Waimea, from HPA intermediary, or the lower school anyway, that had put together a group, and they were doing some caretaking of that skate park. And there was a gentle friends of the park relationship there. And they had done some work. But I think with COVID, things just sort of fell apart as far as all that goes. And so there is interest out there, and it's usually the actual users. I was very supportive of it, but like I said, not again.
Yeah, my son is a skater and it's his favorite skate park ever, anywhere. So yeah, it's a big thing. Glad to hear that something's happening. And I think what we want to do is follow up on with, just to make this a little bit more tight, particularly if there's being graffiti and there's not a clear kind of oversee person. Okay, if it's all right, I'm going to move on while Tim is still here and give the floor, ask Julia to speak. She and Mark were both going to talk, but both there's a Firewires committee that's a part of the Waikoloa Village Association, and there's a Waikoloa Community Leadership Council, and Julia has information on all of the above, and it leads into our next business item. So Julia, would you like to share?
Sure. We've been very busy for the past 3 months with the mayor and some of his deputies and directors joining us, along with Tim Richards. And last month we had the fire chief as well as the deputy chief, who was former PTA chief Mueller, that joined us. So we've been very actively engaged with, besides the fire, short and long-term list that we presented to the mayor months ago, regarding siren, better communications, which we've seen a lot of with civil defense, with text messaging. And we've still got a BLNR issue with DOFA requesting to get our fire breaks widened up at Kohala. And we sent a letter in April or May. We're trying to get some more traction on that. I'm also working with the planning department to see if there's some way that we might be able to be considered a WUI, which is it's a designation. Hawaii doesn't have any in the state. At least there wasn't any listed with the Department of Agriculture. It's a wildland urban interface. And I think that we can get some money if we can get that designation. And Bethany had sent me an email when I asked her if she would give me information on it. And I believe the general plan, they're working on that right now. And that would probably affect our sister Firewise communities that are all around the ring of Mauna Kea, that are prone to fires, from Pu'ukapu to all the way down to Pu'uanahulu and probably down Keaho. But anyway, so that's some interesting stuff. Repeater installation from the fire department. Talmadge needed to get 30 days without any accident, any fires or anything. So I think we're pretty much on our way with that. The Firewise committee is working on the evacuation plan. I was in conversation with Talmadge Mango post like August 4th, right after our fire, because we were without one. And we've got some lessons we've learned from that. So we have our Firewise meeting on Wednesday and we'll be discussing that. Let's see, the Kamakoa baseball field and soccer field and the skate park. One gentleman who I invited onto Waikoloa Community Leadership Council, Bob Fitzgerald, he was our former director of public works, and he's trying to get money and sponsorship through his 501c3 to get the Hilton Grand Vacations to help sponsor that. And then also we spoke to Tim regarding the Waikoloa and the mayor regarding Waikoloa Community Park, Pu'unui, and Ho'oku Street Park. We got Waikoloa Community Development Corporation started a 501c3 3 weeks ago, and we are working with the DPW folks, DPR, Department of Recs and Parks and Recs, as friends of the parks to get a lot of much needed equipment up there. So this is a good thing, and we need to get our roof fixed. Let's see, we've been working on a hardened gym and trying to get a gym or a shelter. And Bobby Command had mentioned there could, or Tim, one of the two of them had mentioned something about possible funding we could try to get through American Jobs Plan. And then the state and county have been successful in securing money for health and safety in the past. So that's something we're actively working on here. Along with high school, possibly a helipad for emergency evacuations, dip tanks. We got a lot of things cooking over here. And then we were also working on a survey for the community, because we need to find out information on the evacuation and the fire and whatnot. And we should have that ready to roll out in the next week or so. We had our meeting last week and got our pretty much our final verbiage on what we wanted, because the mayor and Tim Richards are very upset that a lot of people didn't evacuate. So we're going to try to find out why they didn't evacuate. But so that's pretty much all I have to report right now.
Thank you, Julia. Does anybody else have anything you want to share at this time, or can we move along to item 3 on the business? We good? Okay. So item 3 is a letter to the planning director regarding emergency preparedness and access. Alexis sent this guys to you on September the 8th. It's a draft that I had done, asking for some specific feedback information. The last time we had a big fire in Waikoloa in 2005, I think it was like the 5th of August instead of the 1st of August, but it literally was early August. And that resulted in a very large meeting at Waikoloa Cafeteria with hundreds of people there, and lots of feedback. And we haven't really, we didn't have the same experience that we had from that. We were in much better condition now, but we still haven't had kind of a debrief and a reporting out on exactly, what. So after meeting with trustee and planning department, we discussed this and they asked me to draft a letter. So I did, and that's been sent out to you. I want to know if there's a motion to accept the letter to the planning office. Again, this motion is simply to accept it. If we get a second on that, we discuss it. And if we don't get a second on that, we don't discuss this.
You
Pete.
want a second?
Yeah, Pete moved it and Bill seconded. Okay, great. Thank you. So now, has everybody had a chance to read the letter? So basically, I'll just summarize that for you. It's just we're referencing the 3 fires, the one that was in Hawaiian homelands, the one that was at Waikiki, and I'm talking about in terms of communities affected, and then Waikoloa. And so I just wrote some of the background information that we have on it. But if you get to the heart of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and by the way, it will be interesting because it was the very first time we ever opened up Hulu, which had been the emergency exit road that was put in 2006 after the 2000 fire, so that there would be, it's a single lane exit, westward bound road, but we had never used it again. We actually, Julia talked about, let's hold a fire drill, and we've never really done that, except we did it on the 1st of August. So, well, this is simply a letter to ask them, since that was a new thing, and the road has been improved from its original thing. It's now paved in the parts it needs to be, so it's drivable by regular cars. So the heart of the letter is the request for an accounting of the evacuations of residents from the affected areas in South Kohala, including information from the police, fire, and civil defense departments. And we're asking for timelines of activities, action taken, communications efforts to the affected communities and their effectiveness, and any information to those who wanted to evacuate but were unable due lack of transportation or medical needs, and any other pertinent information. And then what's come up that in the discussion right now is that a lot of people didn't evacuate, and we want to know why they didn't go. And we might want to add that to this letter. In fact, based on what we've been discussing, I think it'd be a good idea to put in addition of that, and to say that we'd like to have, I don't know how well, at any rate, that we'd like information on those that didn't evacuate and why. And then we also asked for them to tell us their process and their plans for sharing it back with the community about what worked well and the lessons learned and what revisions are being made to the future evacuation plans as a result of these evacuations. Thank the county for everything they did, both volunteers and people who work for the county. Appreciate everyone's cooperation on orderly evacuation, and really, Tim, Barry, your communication was actually on the evacuation was actually, it was the best communication, and you were doing it over Facebook. So there was trouble, and I'm sure this will be reported back, but the stuff that was on the civil defense website was not current, and it was dated. And that's one of the things it's probably on the to improve list. And then it just asks that they respond to us as quickly as possible. Our next meeting is not until the 8th of November, but we don't know when there's going to be another fire. So we'd like to know as soon as possible at the larger community level about, what's best practices for next. So that's the gist of the letter. Comments, questions? Tim? Yep. Did you raise your hand, Tim? Okay, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. What you're asking for is, I think, the after action report of the whole,
There you go.
everything. And that I know is being worked on many different levels, from the military to the state to the county, all across the departments, what we can do better. Why did some things work? Why didn't some things work? And I've said this to the Leadership Council, that I want to get the mayor out to Waikoloa and do a Waikoloa community meeting to talk story about this. It's obviously going to have to be managed as we go through this, just to start answering some questions. We did a lot of things really well, and communication is one of the things that we did not do well. That's already been identified, and quite frankly, the communication between the county and the feds was far better than with the state. And again, it's an after action report that we need to follow up on. People were asking for information. We hadn't gotten the fire out yet. And so I said, you're gonna have to hold on that. Now we're collecting that, and I'm in the process of putting together a narrative on this to actually present to our federal delegation to see if we can find some forward stuff. When I say forward, it's the recovery, but the recovery is more than just dollars. We're looking at the economy of what was impacted, but more than that, we're also looking at, we've got homes that were impacted and homesteads that were impacted. But more than that, we're looking at what can we do to prevent this from happening at the same scale. But more than that, we also have an environmental aspect, meaning we have 50,000 acres of denuded range that kicks up a hellacious dust storm that then downrange, just by the way the winds have been blowing. It wasn't Waikoloa Village, it was Punahulu that really got hit with that one. But more than that, we also, with these denuded soils, if we have, or ranges, if we have massive rains, and we could really cause some flooding issues. So it's, from my perspective, I'm looking at all these different facets, rough numbers, and from what I've been able to put together, this fire has probably impacted our community at least $10 million in loss of production. And that's probably a conservative estimate. That does not include the cost of fighting fire. I know the bulldozer time was $1 million. That just for the bulldozers that were out there. We had 5 helicopters. I do the math and all this stuff. It's a very, very expensive fire. And then there's some things we can do to mitigate going forward. And so don't expect quick answers, because there's a lot of thinking that's got to go forward, and still trying to evaluate and get the numbers all around. But to your point, yes, these are conversations we need to have going forward. And, thankfully, Waikoloa Village, we didn't get the impact down to the village because in part there were livestock grazing, so that slowed the progression. We didn't have the flashing. And the winds worked a little bit in our favor for that. We didn't have the 60, 70 mile an hour gusts going through when the fire broached that side. So some things worked for us, some things didn't work for us. One of the things, the Keamoku section has not been grazed in 15 years. That's a fire hazard for Waikoloa Village. So we're looking at this from very many different lenses, aspects, attitudes to try and see going forward. We're going to have fire again. It's not if we're going to have fire. We will have fire again. The question is, how do we plan to mitigate going forward? And so that's all being discussed and pushed back and forth and head scratching on it right now. So believe me, it is not off the table. Everybody's looking at it right now.
Bill?
I think the gist of what was written there is just to get it on the docket with the planning department, that we would like to get some feedback coming through there to make sure that they've seen all of this information. So I don't think you need to update it. I don't think you need to do anything more except park it as something that that we want to know about. So as far as the letter you write, the draft, I'd make a motion to send it to the mayor.
Okay, so we have that on the table. So if we are ready, we have a motion that's been seconded on the table, which is why we got to discuss this. So now if does anybody else want to comment before we vote to send this to the director to ask him to get back to us on this? And
Sorry,
the protocol. Yeah.
Sorry, just a clarifying question for Councilman Tim Richards. The after action report, the intent of that is that it will be shared with community. So this information that we're asking for is already being compiled.
Yes.
And the intent of it will be to share it out to community. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, this is, and that's why I don't expect it quickly, because like I said, everybody's trying to put information together and eventually there'll be a big powwow to figure out how to deal with it. So I would suggest not pushing the directors too hard on trying to get information like this, because they're already trying to compile it in a form. And when we get all said and done, this is county, everything's, freedom of information. Once it's all put together, then it'll be reported back and we'll kind of head scratch and figure out we could spend the next 2 or 3 hours discussing some of the nuances that we didn't know we had to deal with until we were faced in dealing with them. I mean, as an example, something like Pu'ukapu Homestead, DHHL sent out their water truck to put out the fires and the piles of grass mat that they had scraped to make a fire break, but the roads weren't in repair, so they couldn't get the water trucks out there. And so Councilwoman Leloy and I were out there, and so we're able to get Public Works through a memorandum of understanding to get our trucks out there to fix the road so that DHHL could get their trucks there to get the water. So there's just so many of those. And that's just one example of what's going on. So now we're going to look backwards and point at different things and see how we can solve those. But that's going to take time.
Okay. Good. And so back to what Bill was saying, again, this is just to keep our action committee and the planning department in the loop on this. So are we ready to vote on the motion to approve this draft? Anybody else want airtime? Okay, so we can do this by show of hand, or I can call it roll call. With anybody care? Okay, we'll do it by show of hand. All in favor of sending the draft to it, raise your hand. And if you're not on screen, will you raise your hand electronically? Julia, you're not showing. Okay, but we've got, okay, very good. Okay, so the motion's approved unanimously by those present. And then that's being done. we're going to turn now just to the agenda for next meeting. Whoa, it's 6:02. We're doing good. We're going to turn to the agenda for our next meeting, which is November the 8th. Tim, are you signing off? Yes, bless you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I gotta get going. I got twins
Yeah.
to get
Yeah,
dinner ready.
you're the children rule. You go.
Well, they like to pop in. That's why you could see the twins show their face every so once in a while.
That's very cute. All right. Thank you. And thanks for all you've
Yeah,
done.
thanks,
We really-
everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so from just looking back at things that we said in this meeting, there was I think next meeting, we're going to want to hear more on, it sort of depends on what unfolds in what's going on with your work in Waimea, including the issue on the spate cart, which I would actually like us to make sure that stays on our radar until it's addressed, just so that we monitor that. Certainly, Julia, the work that's you're doing in Waikoloa on a wide variety of things, we're gonna want to be able to have that. I personally would like an update in the next meeting on, and if I remembered this, I would have put it on the agenda for this time, but I forgot. But I would really like an update on when we're going to finish the general plan. That's just me. What our timeline is on general plan, since we are many, many years behind on the general plan. Not no one's fault presently, but anyway. What else came up in this meeting that we know we're going to follow up, or that planning? Do you guys have anything that you're thinking of for next meeting?
Not at the moment, but we'll do our usual reach
Okay.
out to AC members to ask. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All then that if that's it, all I need is a motion to adjourn and a second. There's one and a second. Okay. And we will adjourn at 6:06. Okay, that's a 1-hour meeting. Yeah. Okay.
done.
Thank you,
Well,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay.
Good
And
one.